So are we set to go? All right, so I'm just going to read a brief preamble, and then I will ask our chairwoman to take over the meeting. Good afternoon. My name is John Pavicic. I'm Executive Director of the Commission and will be serving as moderator for today's meeting. This is the June 17, 2020 scheduled meeting of the Central Pine Barrens Commission. At this time, I would like to ask the Commission members to identify themselves. So the chairwoman, Carrie Meek-Gallagher, are you present?
Present.
Thank you. For the Suffolk County Executive, would the Suffolk County representatives please say who they are, identify themselves?
Dale. For the executive.
Okay.
My associates, Andy Freeling and Janet Longo, I believe, are along as well.
Thank you.
Freeling's here.
Okay. For the town of Brookhaven, Supervisor?
Yeah, and Emily, next door.
Okay, so Supervisor Romaine and Emily Pines. For the town of Riverhead,
Emily next
Supervisor.
door.
Thank you. The town
Yes.
of Riverhead.
Yvette Aguirre, hi. I'm here
Hello.
I'm here with Dan McCormick.
That's right.
Thank you. And finally, for the town of Southampton, Supervisor.
Supervisor Jay Schneiderman, and I am here with Marty Shea and Janice Shearer.
All right, so for the record, a quorum is present. Before we begin the formal segment, I would like to review a few guidelines for the meeting. The notice of the meeting followed the New York State Open Meetings Law as amended by Governor's Executive Order 202.1, which allows meetings of public bodies to take place telephonically or through other similar services. In regard to public participation, please note that members of the public are able to listen to and view the meeting. However, the public's microphones will be muted and video feeds disabled for the entirety of the meeting. The public has been provided an opportunity to submit comments via email or U.S. mail both prior to and during the meeting. Public comments received by 12 noon today via email or mail will be read during the initial public comments section of the meeting, and the public may also submit comments during the meeting via info@pb.state.ny.us, and these will be read at the second and final public comment section at the end of the meeting. Under meeting, in regard to the commission members themselves, voting on actions and resolutions will be done via a roll call unless they're unanimous, which is what we did at the May meeting. All commission members are asked to clearly state their name when speaking, particularly when making a motion or seconding a motion, and to clearly state their vote when their name is called unless the vote is otherwise unanimous. And all commission members are asked to please consider muting their microphones when not providing comment in order to help ensure that other folks who are speaking are able to be clearly heard. In regard to recording and meeting minutes, the meeting is being recorded via the Zoom application and will be posted on the Commission's website and viewing and listening after the meeting. Please note that the chat window is enabled for troubleshooting purposes only. Meeting minutes will also be prepared as is normal practice. So now at this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to Carrie Meek-Gallagher, Chairwoman of the Commission, to call the meeting to order and preside over the meeting. Chairwoman Gallagher.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll dive right in. John, have we received any public comments to be shared at this time?
Yes, we've received two public comments, which I will recite at this time. The first was from Richard Amper of the Long Island Pine Barrens Society, and that was received this morning, and it contained a letter dated June 16th, 2020. It says, John, what is and Sam Hill is going on? The Hill submits documents to the Commission in support of their project days before the deadline. It seems to be providing information on a Pine Barrens development that is entirely different from what was provided to the Southampton Town Board and the Southampton Planning Board. This is an outrage. The applicant has been consistently changing its project without providing supporting information. Add to this, I discovered on the Commission's website today, there is a proposed review of the revised project without any time to prepare a reaction. There is no way that the commission could respond to this massive input. I know because the environmental community is trying to do so. The applicant's submission is absolutely incompatible with its past submissions, violates New York State's Environmental Quality Review Act, and the applicant is obviously trying to obtain the commission's approval of a project that is utterly inconsistent with the Pine Barrens Protection Act. What is now proposed is significantly different from what has been previously proposed. The commission requires the time to review it. Staff and the environmental community deserve appropriate time to review the applicant's massive new application for a project different from the earlier submission. This is the biggest and baddest proposal ever presented to the commission. The current application differs significantly from the previous proposal. So the current project should be disapproved by the commission, since what is now presented is not what has been previously proposed by the applicant. The commission seems to be responding to a demand for consideration of a new project on the day before the Pine Barrens Commission is set to meet. Neither the staff nor the community can respond to the massive claims of the applicant in such a short time. We have no scheduled adequate location for a hearing, no opportunity for staff to respond to the alternatives being advanced by the applicant, and no real opportunity for the community to point out the shortcomings of the new application. John, the applicant's project is inconsistent with the Pine Barrens Protection Act. It is violative of state environmental law. It has been properly reviewed neither by the commission nor the community, and still moves ahead with little or no public input. Add to this notion that the commission should respond to the applicant's June 3rd submission 24 hours before the commission's June 17th meeting suggests the greatest shortcoming in review of a project in the history of the Pine Barrens Protection Act. This must be fixed at once, or we will take this matter directly to Governor Cuomo. I'm furious. This is inexcusable. Please call me at once. Sincerely, Richard Amper, Executive Director, and it's carbon copied to the Pine Barrens Commission, John Malazzo, Julie Hargrave, Senator Kenneth P. Laval, New York State Controller, and Assembly Member Steve Engelbright. So that was the first email comment that we received. The second one also received subsequently this morning from Mr. Amper. States, as you requested, I'm asking the commission to acknowledge that the most recent proposal before the commission is so substantially different from the previous submissions that it should be reviewed at a new traditional public hearing, one not constrained by a temporary review procedure. This can be accomplished by seeking an extension of time for review and consideration of public input. If the applicant will not grant such an extension, the commission should disapprove the project as previously presented because it is inconsistent with the provisions of the Pine Barrens Act and SECRA. In any case, we ask that the convening of a decision on the earlier project be delayed until after July 5th in the hope that a more traditional public hearing may be completed in the usual manner. In fairness and equity to the public, we ask for the commission's consideration. Changing the rules for this applicant is simply unfair. Richard Amper. So at this time, that is the close of that comment, and we have received no other comments besides those two.
All right, so we can revisit obviously at the end of the meeting and see if any additional comments have come in to be read out then. We'll move on to the minutes from our May 20th meeting for review and approval.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 20th meeting.
Okay, member I'm sorry, who was that?
Ed Romaine.
No, I know Ed Romaine. Was there a second?
I second it.
Okay.
Ed Aguirre.
Aguilar.
Great. All, so is it unanimous?
Yes.
Right, no, okay. So we can
It's
just do that,
unanimous?
right? It's unanimous, John.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 2, Science and Stewardship. We have an MOU between the Research Foundation for SUNY and SUNY ESF and the Pine Barrens Commission. John, is this you?
Yes, this is me.
Okay.
So This is something that we have been trying to bring to fruition for several years. We've had discussions going back quite a number of years with SUNY ESF and with B&L in terms of establishing a more formalized forest health research and monitoring program and forest health monitoring program in the Central Pine Barrens. This agreement brings that to the fore, and I'll just point out that the Commission has consistently the past several years carried forth in its approved budgets a line item in support of funding these types of forest health research efforts. So SUNY ESF and the Research Foundation have already executed this contract, and so I have provided a brief explanatory memo to the Commission and a draft resolution and then the actual agreement itself. And so I'd be happy to answer any other questions that the Commission may have. Otherwise, I would ask for the Commission's consideration in adopting and approving this resolution.
We'll make a motion to approve the draft resolution of the Central Pine Barrens Joint Planning and Policy Commission to enter into MOU with the State University of New York Research Foundation.
I'll
So that
second.
was Supervisor Romaine. That was
Yes.
Supervisor Romaine. Okay, and a second.
I'll second.
That was Supervisor Schneiderman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and,
This,
go ahead, John.
go ahead. I'm
We're gonna
sorry.
vote?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Is it unanimous?
Yep.
Good.
Yes.
Thank
You, Carrie.
Yeah, then we'll move on. Agenda item number 3, land use, planning and land use. First item is compatible growth area, core preservation area, critical resource area, which we received public comments on, the Lewis Road planned residential development, assertion of jurisdiction application. The hearing's been adjourned. The decision deadline currently is July 15th. And Julie, I believe you're going to give us a status update, right?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. On June 3rd, the Commission received a submission from the applicant for Lewis Road, including a response to the staff report that was prepared in February and a revised master plan showing the steep slopes and the clearing plan. They're the large, small-scale plans. The master plan shows, again, in the small scale, the development shifted southward on the project site and to create a larger block of open space in the northerly section. Yes, please, if you should all have received a copy of the submission as well. And since this material was received on June 3rd and the staff performed a preliminary review of that material in advance of another potential hearing to provide some feedback to the applicant in advance of that hearing. And the draft letter identified some items that are still needed to verify conformance with the Central Pine Barrens Comprehensive Land Use Plan. And these include details on the impact and removal of steep slopes, clearing and unfragmented open space, and nitrogen analysis. Again, there were responses to items in the staff report, but a lot of the items that were received, or the material that was received, was qualitative. It didn't have some of the data that was requested, some of the specific details on steep slopes and the amount of fragmented open space to remain. There is another parcel that the applicant is purchasing adjacent to Parlato, which is part of the open space for this project, and it's another 11 acres. And that would be sterilized, and no additional yield would come off of that. They've estimated it could yield another 2 lots, but they're not going to add 2 lots to come off of that property. So the 3 actions that are proposed for you today are scheduling a public hearing, potentially for July 15th, authorizing the release of the draft letter to the applicant, the letter that the staff has drafted to respond to the submission, and an extension of the decision deadline to August 19th, and that was a request of the applicant by letter dated June 15th, received a couple days ago.
I'll make the first motion to schedule the public hearing for this applicant for July 15th.
Dorian Dale, second.
And that public hearing is not to, it's not to schedule a public hearing, it's just to resume
Right,
the
to
hearing
resume,
that's been adjourned.
right,
Continued public hearing, that's
to
right.
continue the public hearing,
Right,
right.
right. for
Just so
July
we're
15th.
clear in the resolution, yeah. Are there any, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any comments? Otherwise, is it unanimous that we want to resume the public hearing on July 15th? All right, sounds like it is. So that was item number 1. Julie, we also then need to vote to authorize sending the comment letter.
That's correct, yes.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Dorian Dale, second.
Great. Any comments on that? If not, is it unanimous? Good, we'll get that comment letter out. And then the third item is we need to vote to accept the decision deadline extension, Julie?
Yes, to August 19th.
Yes, okay. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Jay made a motion. Is there a second?
Dorian Dale, second.
Dorian Dale, second. Great. Any comment? Is it no, unanimous?
Yes.
All right, great. So we will grant that extension or accept that extension. And obviously, I'm sure we will be revisiting this between now and then once we get a better handle on what type of public gathering and public hearing format will be possible at that time. Okay, so on to item 3B, compatible growth area, Silver Corporate Park Development of Regional Significance, CGA hardship decision. Julie?
Thank you. Yes, you should have a draft decision that was circulated to the commission. The decision approves the hardship that was requested with conditions. Just to remind you, this is the development of regional significance in the compatible growth area. It's a 12-lot commercial industrial subdivision to construct 550,000 square feet of commercial industrial uses on 71 acres in Yaphank, west of Sills Road on the north service road of the Long Island Expressway. The project is a result of a stipulation of settlement with the town of Brookhaven in 2014. And originally, the project site was 190 acres. Since more than a decade, 120 acres have been acquired by the town out of the original 192 acres, and this project occurs on the remaining 71 acres. And the hardship is to disturb 18,948 square feet, less than half an acre on the 71 acre site, which is less than 1% of the project site. The project protects more than 31 acres of habitat and steep slopes, including 25 acres that are required to be set aside as natural after the clearing limit was met, and an additional more than 6 acres of preserved open space and steep slopes, and a roadside buffer to protect the roadside character. So the project conditions include protecting the open space and with fencing, and setting the clearing limit at the maximum amount that they are permitted, phasing the construction, and an expiration date of this approval is 5 years. And they can come back to the commission with requests for an extension if they need it. Again, it's a large project, so it won't happen all at once. There are other conditions to prepare covenants and restrictions to protect the natural area, and conducting a survey of a rare endangered butterfly that was identified by the DEC, and submission of those survey results. And you have the decision, so we would need your motions on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the decision as distributed regarding the Silver Corporate Park.
Is there a second?
They meet, and they've met.
Anyone? If not, I will second
Really well.
Ed's motion.
Oh, great.
Is it unanimous?
I'll-
Hearing no objections, I'll assume it's unanimous.
So you could just raise your hand if you're voting yes. Supervisor Riverhead, yes. Thank you. Dorian, thank you. Supervisor Schneiderman, thank you. Supervisor Romaine, thank you. Carrie, you have 5.
Okay. Great. So we will get that approval out, Julie, and we are then back to final public comment period.
Okay.
Did we receive anything during the course of the meeting, John?
No, nothing further.
Okay. And then I know we do need a closed advisory session to discuss some enforcement matters. Will we need to come back into public session for any reason? I know it's challenging with Zoom. No? So we can just adjourn? Can we just adjourn?
I make a motion to
Yeah, we can
adjourn the
adjourn.
regular meeting and move into a closed advisory session, at the end of which we will come out, adjourn, and conduct no further business.
Okay, I'll second that.
Carrie, wasn't there an additional public portion that we said we were going to do?
We just did. No one submitted any public comments during the course of the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so now for the closed session, once we adjourn, we call in on that. We don't Zoom in, is that correct?
Right, exactly. So we will adjourn, everyone will leave this Zoom meeting.
Right.
And dial into the other meeting.
Great,
Okay.
super. Thank you. Good to see
Okay.
everyone.
Right, and that was unanimous to adjourn, right? So we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Speak to you next month. I mean, commission members in a few minutes, but